At the beginning of the 5th century, Roman citizens went to sleep believing they lived in the greatest civilization the world had ever known, and woke up surrounded by signs that something was irreversibly wrong. Frontiers once considered impenetrable were beginning to give way. Foreign peoples were crossing rivers that for centuries had served as natural barriers of the empire. Fear, once distant, was now approaching the walls. The legions still marched. The imperial eagles still gleamed in the sun. The Senate still convened. But beneath the surface of marble and gold, the Roman world was cracking. And across the vast territories of the empire, a troubling question began to echo. Could Rome truly fall? What many did not realize was that they were witnessing not merely a political or military crisis, but the slow collapse of a system that had sustained the West for nearly 1,000 years. A collapse that would permanently transform Europe and redefine the course of history. This was the end of the Western Roman Empire, and once the process began, there was no stopping it. To understand this monumental fall, we must first understand the height from which Rome descended. The Roman Empire was not merely vast territory, it was an extraordinarily complex machine of administration, engineering, and military power. Paved roads connected continents. Aqueducts carried water across dozens of miles. Roman law organized diverse societies under a single authority. From the deserts of Syria to the forests of Britannia, millions lived under the promise of the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For centuries, that peace had been maintained through discipline, organization, and force. The legions were the backbone of the empire. Soldiers trained, equipped, and strategically stationed, protected borders stretching thousands of miles. But sustaining an empire of that scale required immense resources: gold, taxes, food, men. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the costs began to exceed the capacity. By the 3rd century, the empire had already endured a devastating crisis. Emperors were assassinated in rapid succession. Generals proclaimed themselves rulers. Borders were pressured by Germanic tribes and the Sassanid Empire in the east. Stability seemed fragile. It was in this context that Diocletian attempted reform. He divided the empire into 2 administrations, east and west, in an effort to make it more governable. Later, Constantine consolidated power in the east and founded Constantinople, a new capital strategically positioned. The division seemed pragmatic, but over time, it would create 2 distinct realities. The Eastern Roman Empire prospered. Wealthier, more urbanized, and better defended, it grew increasingly resilient. The West, however, with longer frontiers and fewer resources, became vulnerable. And then came the force that would change everything: the movement of peoples. In the late 4th century, a new power emerged from the steppes of Central Asia: the Huns. Highly mobile nomadic warriors whose arrival triggered a domino effect. Germanic peoples, Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Vandals, Suebi, began pressing against Roman borders, seeking refuge within the empire. Rome allowed some to enter, but integration was poorly managed. Abuse, hunger, and mistrust turned potential allies into enemies. In 378, at the Battle of Adrianople, the unthinkable happened. Emperor Valens was killed, and a Roman army was annihilated by the Visigoths. It was a profound psychological shock. For the first time in centuries, Rome appeared vulnerable in open battle. From that moment forward, the balance would never fully recover. In 410, the symbolic heart of the empire was struck. Alaric and his Visigoths marched into Rome itself. For 3 days, the Eternal City was looted. It had been nearly 800 years since a foreign army had captured Rome. Though the political capital had long since shifted elsewhere, the psychological impact was seismic. The city that had conquered the Mediterranean now stood helpless before former subjects. St. Jerome, writing from Bethlehem, described the moment with disbelief. The city that had taken the whole world was itself taken, yet Rome did not fall overnight. The empire staggered on, weakened but breathing. Throughout the early 5th century, waves of migrations continued. In 406, Vandals, Suebi, and Alans crossed the frozen Rhine into Gaul. Roman authority in Western Europe began to fracture. Provinces that had once relied on imperial protection increasingly defended themselves or submitted to new rulers. Britannia was abandoned. Roman legions withdrew, leaving local populations exposed. In Hispania and North Africa, Vandals carved out kingdoms of their own. When Carthage fell to the Vandals in 439, Rome lost one of its most vital grain supplies. The economic consequences were devastating. Without North African grain, feeding Italy became difficult. Tax revenues declined. Coinage was debased. The imperial administration grew weaker. Meanwhile, the military itself was changing. Increasingly, Rome relied on Federati, barbarian troops serving under their own leaders in exchange for land and payment. Loyalty shifted from empire to warlord. Then came Attila. In the mid-5th century, Attila the Hun launched devastating campaigns across the Balkans and into Gaul. Cities burned, refugees flooded the countryside. Though Attila was eventually checked, the strain on Roman resources was immense. The empire was no longer dictating events, it was reacting to them. Political instability worsened. Emperors were elevated and deposed with alarming speed. Real power often lay not with the emperor, but with military strongmen behind the throne. By 476, the Western Roman Empire was a shadow of its former self. That year, a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer deposed the young emperor Romulus Augustulus. The imperial insignia were sent to Constantinople. There would be no new Western emperor. The transition was surprisingly quiet. There was no grand final battle, no apocalyptic destruction, just a gradual recognition that the old structure no longer existed. The Western Roman Empire had fallen, but the story does not end in ruins. Roman law endured. The Latin language evolved into the Romance languages. The Church preserved administrative frameworks. Infrastructure, though decaying, shaped medieval trade routes. Even the so-called barbarian kingdoms adopted Roman titles and systems to legitimize their rule. The collapse was not the end of civilization, it was a transformation. The optimism of classical antiquity gave way to a harsher, fragmented Europe. Power became localized. Cities shrank. Trade contracted. Yet new identities began to form, the seeds of medieval kingdoms. For centuries, the fall of Rome has been portrayed as a catastrophic end to greatness. But empty forums, abandoned villas, and silent amphitheaters raise a more complex question. Was it truly a fall, or a transition into something new? The Roman Empire was a test of human organization on an unprecedented scale. And tests of complex systems have a way of repeating themselves. In the end, I am Tom, observing the past so we can understand the present. And together we keep history alive. This is Tom, the Lord of History. I'll see you in the next era.